On a chilly November 7th, 2017 morning, the nation woke up to tragic and blood-curdling news.
The governor of Nyeri, Gakuru, involved in a road accident.
The accident occurred on the Nairobi-Nyeri highway.
First, it lost control before it hit a rail guard. It penetrated the entire length of the vehicle.
Gakuru has been rushed to Thika Level 5 hospital for treatment.
Woken up to news of the demise of Nyeri County Governor Dr. Wahome Gakuru.
Nyeri County Governor Dr. Patrick Wahome Gakuru had perished in a horrific road crash. The nation was abuzz with speculation. How did he die? Was it premeditated? Why was the medical response low? And why it took long to retrieve Gakuru from the wreckage? An inquest would be set up to look into the grey areas. My name is Duncan Haimba, and this is NTV Investigates Gakuru's horrific demise. The second elected and third governor of Nyeri County had served for just 79 days and chaired only one county executive committee meeting when he met his tragic demise. It was an incident that shook the nation, and the establishment of an inquest into the incident would lift the lid on events leading to his death and after. Current Nyeri Governor Edward Mutahi Kahiga, who was then Gakuru's deputy, was with his boss on the eve of the crash.
I remember the chief of staff telling us, Governor, I am which direction? And the governor said, oh, I'm going to pass Kiganjo, check my house, and then go to Nairobi because I have 2 interviews tomorrow. I actually told him, I think it would be a very good idea for you to go rather than go very early in the morning. You can always go early. He said, yeah, DG, I'll go through Kiganjo. See, he was doing a construction in his home. See how it goes, and then I'll drop to Nairobi. But just before we left, there is a lady who came in and he introduced her to, I may not remember the name, but he intended, she was a journalist, and he intended for her to, I think he wanted to interview her so that he could give her a job as a director, governor's press. And so I and the chief of staff left him, and we went downstairs, and I went home. I was unwell and I slept, but very early the next morning, at around, I think, 6 or earlier than that, here is a call. I was actually called by one of our administrators. He told me, hey, something has happened. I said, what? The governor has been involved in an accident. I asked him, which accident? Yesterday night? He said, no, this morning. Where? I thought he left last night.
Records reveal that on the eve of the incident, the governor stayed up too late with his aides, discussing upcoming media interviews and his personal safety before retiring to bed.
There were not people really who were thinking about harming the governor. That one I can put it that way. There were actually people who loved the governor, who had campaigned for him. And you see, when somebody wins an election, there are only a few seats or few positions that can be shared. And sometimes a governor or even a president will want to have balances. The balances of the regions, allies and all that.
The governor reportedly had a premonition of imminent ill fate and openly spoke about it. It was made worse when key security personnel dozed off as they drank the night away. Gakuru was furious.
He dozed off and dropped a glass. And the governor, and he did not even know that he had dropped the glass. The governor asked me, is this a guy we are trusting with our security? Is this? So he was starting to have doubts.
At 4 a.m., the security detail arrived at his residence here at Ring Road, Nyeri, ready for departure. A tired Governor Gakuru had slept in and only emerged an hour and a half later.
He wanted to postpone them, and he told me I will not go for the interviews because I'm feeling tired. But his security had left, knowing that the driver and the bodyguard that who usually accompany him, used to accompany him, had left with the instructions that they are coming back. They are coming tomorrow at 4 a.m. in the morning.
Corporal Ahmed Kaib was the head of the unit and governor's bodyguard. With him was driver Samson Kinyanjui Wanyaga and one Josephat Mwangi Maina, Elias Baba Maina, a close aide and guard. Albert Gakuru Mushiri, the governor's personal assistant, would be picked up along the way.
Tukaona governor amechomoka kwa nyumba, akaingia Mercedes mbele. So mimi na driver tukakimbia, tukaingia kwa gari. Mimi nikachukua back left. Governor ameingia mbele, mimi nimeingia nyuma. So tukaanza safari. Kufika hapa kwa skuta, Baba Maina akaambiwa wewe rudi kwa Cheska. Kaambia Albert pia ataingia hapa. Na hapa katikati ni koti inawekwa.
Kinyanjui would later testify that he was driving at about 115 kilometers per hour when the governor asked him to overtake a canter.
Wakati tumefika hapo Yokeno, Makinji, driver wanted to overtake lori. Na alikuwa na overspeed. And alishinda kucontrol gari. Na hakuwa na experience ya kuendesha Mercedes. So from there, gari kaingia kwa hiyo guardrail. So unajua kawaida mtu sasa akistuka sasa anapiga nduru. Tukapiga nduru. Gari kasimama. Gari kasimama na tukasimamisha nduru. Nikaangalia governor, nikaona tu amenyamaza. Nikajiangalia. Nikaona najaribu kusonga, sisongi. Nikaona kweli leo tumeingia accident. From there nikachukua simu, nimepigia bibi yangu. Nikamwambia yeye ndo mtu ya kwanza. Nimeambia tumeingia accident na sijui mahali tuko. Na sina mguu mbili.
The Cheska registration number GKB663G, a Toyota Corolla, which was relatively far behind, arrived at the scene.
So Cheska akasimama. Kwanza walishika brake. Wakiona ile kiti nilikuwa nakaa ya nyuma ikatolewa kwa boot, ikatupa huko barabara. Kashika brake sasa wakaona kweli hii ndio gari ya governor. Kafungua mlango, akanitoa, akaniweka nje. Nimehand over bunduki ya serikali. Kaambia shikeni bunduki ya serikali. Nikaona hali yangu si sawa. So kutoka hapo nimetupa mkono juu. Nimeomba Mwenyezi Mungu.
The speeding car rammed into the railguard, which went through the governor's pelvic, cutting off the bodyguard's right leg. It chopped off 3 fingers of the personal assistant Mushiri and yanked off the middle back seat. The driver did not sustain any injuries. As witnesses rescued the bodyguard and the personal assistant from the wreckage, the injured governor remained trapped, the guardrail plowing through his pelvic area.
So wakajaribu tena kuokoa governor. I don't know vile ilikuwa, lakini kama ilisindikana. Sababu nasikia yeye alishikwa na mlango yake ilishikwa na guardrail. So akakwama.
Corporal Kaib and Mushiri were rushed to Thika Level 5 Hospital by the Cheska, while it took more than half an hour to remove the governor from the wreckage. A seriously injured Gakuru would be taken to Thika Level 5 Hospital about 45 minutes later by one Kin Wachira, who happened to be traveling to Nairobi. Dr. Lois Muthini was an intern doctor on duty at the hospital that Black Tuesday morning. As witness number 13, she told the inquest that Governor Gakuru was brought in at 7:25 a.m. He suffered severe blood loss and serious injuries. He was in shock, stuttered in speech with shallow breathing. His clothes were soaked in blood, and his eyes and hands had turned pale. He was visibly in pain and needed urgent attention. As an intern and with senior doctors yet to arrive, the governor could not be taken into the theatre, only attended in the casualty, where they attempted to stop the pelvic bleeding. With Gakuru's condition deteriorating, interns Muthini, Njagi and the nursing officer called a Dr. Wamboi to consent to a procedure to boost his breathing and transfused blood group O positive, but without testing his, as this would have taken longer. By the time anesthetist Margaret intervened to prepare him for theatre, the patient had deteriorated. Further procedures by the doctors upon arrival did little. Cardiologist Dr. Dan Gikonyo would attempt resuscitation before pronouncing the governor dead at 8:25 a.m. A chopper dispatched by the Council of Governors to airlift Gakuru did not even land. He had breathed his last, aged 51.
Kichwa yangu ilikuwa inaangalia kwa mlango, na mimi nilikuwa naangalia ndani. So kutoka hapo ile first aid imepewa, bado nilikuwa na uchungu sana. Nikifanya kichwa hivi, nikaona governor amelazwa karibu na mimi. Nikaona wamemweka ile balloon, akaanza kufinya kifua. Mimi naangalia tu kama atafungua macho, kaona afungui macho. Wakachange hiyo balloon, wakaleta gas, ile gas mrefu tena wakaweka hapo, wakafinya kifua. Nikaona hafungui macho. Nikaona wameanza maombi. Nimeona wameanza maombi, hapo mimi nikajua hapo iko mtu amenishinda. So kutoka hapo ndio mimi tukatolewa. Tukaletwa, nasikia information inasemekana tupelekwe Nairobi Hospital ama Aga Khan.
Listening to Dr. Lois, the feeling or the feeling, the aftermath is, you wonder, this was at the time I believe she was an intern. An intern has no decision-making ability. They require the input of a consultant, I believe, or a supervisor on the ground.
Up to today, I keep asking everybody who bothers to listen. How did Wahome Gakuru find himself in the Mercedes-Benz outside Nyeri when we had agreed with him because it was faulty, and he had told me about 3 or 4 times, my brother, he got it.
This pronouncement by Governor Kahiga at a requiem mass for Gakuru on November 14, 2017 would set tongues wagging, leading to the inquest. Driver Kinyanjui told the court that he was called by Mwangi aka Baba Maina on Monday evening to be briefed about the Nairobi trip the next day. They had fueled a Pajero car for the trip, only for Baba Maina to emerge with the keys to the Mercedes-Benz on the governor's instruction, at least he claimed. Kinyanjui had chauffeured Gakuru for less than a week. But it was at the prosecution of Kinyanjui for speeding at the Kigumo law courts that events would take a dramatic twist.
However, it turned out to be a long wait for Samuel. The court case failed to proceed because the Director of Public Prosecutions hadn't approved the charges that were to be preferred against Samuel. Indeed, as the officers who brought him to court prepared to arraign him, the file containing details of the case were recalled by the DPP, who says he will communicate a fresh date for the case for the driver after a thorough perusal of the file.
That call from above to stop arraignment of a driver who was already in court made it clear that strings were being pulled from elsewhere.
We need to turn every stone and know the truth about the death of Wahome. And we also want to know the beneficiaries.
During the cross-examination of prosecution witness number 15, Corporal Francis Kisavi, he said a Kigumo State Council told him that he had received instructions from the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions not to register the matter. Driver Kinyanjui was later released on 20,000 shillings cash bail.
Even that stopping the prosecution is part of what the manipulation that was going on around that time. There was disinformation from the scene of accident. Help was not coming to the scene of accident. Wahome was being yanked from the car by members of Fabric. There were no paramedics. There was no ambulance. There was nothing. It is not an accident that happened far away in the countryside. It is in the highway, a major highway. And any help was being diverted to Thika Hospital. I hear even Dr. Gekonyo came, but he was diverted to, there was even a chopper, an ambulance that was diverted that could have landed there to help the guy survive. Because actually Wahome Gakuru had no serious injuries, according to the pathologist. Why I say there was a conspiracy to keep him there? The guy had high blood pressure and he was taking medications towards that, which actually makes you, if you're cut, you can bleed profusely. Why the help did not come is a wonder. And it's one of the things that makes us believe that there was another hand. And if you look at the issues around that time, there's this fake guy who came there, who was, I don't remember, he was giving updates on the accident as somebody of authority.
Corporal Kisavi was stationed at Makuyu Police Station, which is 14 kilometers away from the scene. He was the first officer at the crash site. Kisavi told the court that upon hitting the guardrail on the first impact, the front left tire hit the rail stand and came off, flying several meters away. At the first impact, the rail was cut off and the vehicle deflected back on the road. It then spun back to the railguard a second time as the driver struggled through a deployed airbag. From the second point of impact, the car screeched through the rail for 48.8 meters, he said, plowing away 16 supporting metal pillars. The guardrail tore through Gakuru's pelvic area for that whole distance, Kisavi concluded. Witness number 11, one Dennis Njogu Ireri, a motor vehicle inspector from NTSA Nyeri Inspection Unit, would then throw a spanner in the works when he told the inquest that all airbags deployed. A claim refuted by others in the car, who said the governor's airbag did not. During his cross-examination, Njogu would assert that failure of the airbag to deploy could have been as a result of the governor's failure to fasten his seatbelt. But findings by Chief Government Pathologist Johansen Oduor concluded that the governor may actually have had his safety belt on, yet his airbag still failed to deploy. He even detailed bruises on the shoulder and the abdomen, consistent with a fastened belt, in debunking Njogu's claims. This was a major point of divergence that needed verification. Only the wreckage car had been mysteriously moved from the responsible station to DCI Nakuru. The inquest could not access it. Koplo Kisavi would alarm the inquest by declaring that the car was quietly moved by unknown individuals. This was irregular. How could a random person have taken the car away from a police station without anyone's knowledge? The cause of death was ruled to be severe loss of blood. Had the governor been rescued earlier or the excess bleeding stopped at the crash scene, he would likely have lived, Oduor concluded. The family is still coming to terms.
Everyone else was rushed to the hospital. The governor was left to the masses of public to try and get him out of that vehicle. There was no ambulance deployed. There was no emergency vehicle deployed. A man of that caliber. By the time he's getting to the hospital, he's almost bled to death. He requires a transfusion. The intern cannot make a decision, nor can they even requisition those points. They are trying to reach a consultant or a supervisor who's supposed to be on call, and they're not reaching these persons. At the very least, I would have expected a county ambulance to be deployed from the hospital. So is it that there were no ambulances available? Was there dereliction of duty from persons or, it doesn't make sense. It does not make sense. So even then, to me, it represents a systemic failure of systems. I believe that there was time wasted that could have been used to salvage the life of Daktari. There's a lot that could have been done. He did not need to spend almost 40 minutes by himself on the road. People using crude weapons to try and get him out of that vehicle. Being transported by private means. Yeah. How does that make sense to anyone? A whole governor. What is the protocol for handling, such a person in his capacity as a governor? Who makes decisions that the other persons need to go first, and then the governor to be left by himself at the mercy of public? If there was opportunity to play foul, it could have happened when he's still stuck at that vehicle. He was totally exposed. Totally exposed. So we can, you can infer whatever. I mean, it wasn't ideal. It's not an ideal situation.
NTV Investigates returned to the scene of crash in a bid to piece together witness accounts into the events of that morning. The dark spot in Mackenzie is a lash of green, the silence of nature only disturbed by the whizzing of speeding traffic. The wreckage of that morning's horror 7 years ago littered this now clear stretch of road, and a senior life was lost.
When the inquest case number 9 of 2018 into Governor Gakuru's death got underway, this scene of accident here in Mackenzie along Nyeri-Nairobi Highway and the Thika Level 5 Hospital would become subjects of interest as they attempted to piece together events of that fateful Tuesday morning. The inquest would visit on 12th of August 2021, during which they invited the 4 police officers who processed this scene for questioning. The 4, however, would not show up. It was also established that the ill-fated Mercedes was irregularly and silently moved from Makuyu police station to DCI Nakuru. But perhaps the most startling revelation was the existence of a suspicious character in the governor's security detail that nobody knew about.
Baba Maina told the inquest that he was a Class 7 dropout and that the governor trusted him above everyone else as head of security. Shocking witnesses' accounts detailed how he bragged about being a senior superintendent of police and head of DCI Machakos County. He would even summon and command senior officers at the governor's residence.
How did we have an imposter as the head of security?
I don't know. That was in Wahome Gakuru's own. We don't know. We were shocked ourselves too, because it is until the DCI came to us and they were asking us, who was this? I was shocked and I said, my God, we were told he was an SSP. So that was Wahome Gakuru's choice, and how he ended up there, we don't know.
I'm not privy to how he came up to be Wahome's head of security. But according to Wahome, that guy is a senior superintendent of police and somebody who had a direct access to the then leadership of the police, the director of CID. He was actually, just like any conman would, I don't know at what level they were dealing with those, at what basis he was dealing with the leadership of the police at that time. But he had all the trappings of a senior police officer who had handcuffs and who was always armed.
A peek through records of inquest proceedings at the Nyeri Chief Magistrates Court reveals startling findings on circumstances around the late governor's life, the eve and the morning of his crude death. Wahome Gakuru reportedly feared for his life and even openly spoke about it. Prosecution witness number 1, Josephat Mwangi Elias Baba Maina, the imposter and head of security, told the inquest that on the week before his death, the late governor was a visibly disturbed man, owing to a political fallout with the senior members of his campaign team. The court was informed that one Kenywa Kimuru from Mathira, who financed the governor's campaign, had declared an all-out political war with Gakuru. Kimuru had reportedly bargained for the position of political advisor in Gakuru's administration, but was instead offered that of executive committee member for water and environment. He declined it, and a fallout ensued. Feeling betrayed and bitter, Kenywa Kimuru is reported to have invited allies and loyalists to a feast at his home in Mathira, where a political revenge plot was discussed. The governor caught wind of it with an audio recording to boot, and the matter gravely disturbed him. Gakuru is said to have even spoken publicly about it at a service here at PCA Magutu Church in Karatina the day after.
He was a worried man, even during campaigns. He said he was up against vicious and dangerous cartels that had dominated Nyeri and who were corruptly stealing and benefiting from the funds that were being channeled to Nyeri.
From day one, when we got into office, Dr. Wahome Gakuru was always disturbed. Number one, he was paranoid about death, because I remember he had told me a number of times, DG, let's be careful now that we have come to this office. Because really the campaigns were not very peaceful. some of the staff would insult him out there and all that. So when we got into office, I can tell you for sure that over the period of time he was there, he did not take a cup of tea in that office. Even when we had visitors, the tea would be served, his would remain in the cup, the rest of us would take, but he would not take his until he brought in the tea girl who had lasted for a very short time. That was when I saw him at least take a cup of tea.
He was very particular about even how his food was prepared. He was very particular about who would come into his kitchen. He would sometimes do the cooking himself. He had to specifically look for somebody he trusted.
Governor Kahiga says Gakuru never took lunch in the office, but would return home every day, where he is also said to have supervised cooking every so often. Prosecution witness number 14, Waruru Ndegwa, who is Gakuru's nephew, told the inquest that he never ate meals in top Nyeri hotels and that he would pop into random food kiosks for a quick snack. The court was also told that Gakuru promised a thorough audit of county finances, including some pending bills amounting to 720 million shillings inherited from the previous administration. But in a county where wealth is power and an element of political dominion, senior politicians and businessmen were not amused. Among them was then Mathira Member of Parliament Rigathi Gachagua, a young brother of the county's late first Governor James Nderitu Gachagua. Waruru naming him among interested parties. Court submissions even claimed that Rigathi wielded great influence in the county affairs at the time of his brother's ailment. Gakuru's family would later list Gachagua among the 5 persons of interest to be summoned by the inquest.
Among the things he spoke about was transparency, accountability. Those were key issues, and he spoke about them with a passion. And so even as we sat there, he told all of us, now we are here, we have the opportunity, we are not going to be a thieving administration. And he himself said, told us, you see now, I want to relook at the audits that have been done in this county so that we know whether anything is missing or something like that. We had already incurred we had inherited a debt of about 711 million. He had said that. I remember in that first meeting he said he was going to invite the Auditor General to come and relook at them.
Seven years after his death, and memories of Wahome Gakuru are still fresh in the minds of people of Nyeri, more so here in Karatina, where he frequented this PCA Magutu church, building relationships with the locals that would later propel him to the most powerful office in the county. His death came too soon and tragically, they tell us.
Alikuwa mtu mzuri. Na mtu mwenye roho safi kusikiliza watu. Vision 2030 ya Wahome Gakuru ilikuwa tungekuwa tu mbele mno sana. Lakini tulishangaa kusikia kifo chake huko Kabati.
The man is still fondly remembered by the local community here for his faith and dedication to the church. But even so, his private life had issues. NTV Investigates has established that the governor's decision not to travel the evening before his Nairobi engagements could have been as a result of not just engagements but also family trouble. Witness Baba Maina told the inquest that Gakuru could not spend the night at the home of his first wife Catherine Kirumba Karemu in Runda since they were separated. The option was his second wife Wangoi Mwaura, but they had differences at the time. Baba Maina told the inquest that the governor and Catherine lived separately and were on the verge of concluding their divorce when Gakuru became county chief. He would find himself in trouble with Gakuru's family for collecting his jacket at the accident scene and handing it over to Catherine, knowing too well the two had separated. It apparently had critical personal documents and money.
Vile governor alisema hiyo koti kuna pesa ikae katikati. Wakati tuliingia accident, nikatolewa kwa gari, nikaletwa kwa lami, nikafanya shingo hivi, nikapata Baba Maina anasimama mbele ya gari ya governor huko na anasimama na koti. Sasa wakati hiyo ndo nimecheka, na nimecheka na uchungu. Ile kitu imeingia kwa maini yangu. Sisi tuliumia. Hii jamaa badala yeye ashughulike sisi ama atoe sisi kwa gari, ameona asimame na hiyo pesa huko.
In his defense, Baba Maina claimed the differences between the two had been simmering down. With regard to the divorce, Catherine Kirumba told the court that Gakuru filed for divorce, citing cruelty as grounds. She was later appointed Kenya's High Commissioner to London, a position that was lobbied for by Governor Mutahi Kahiga and former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua.
You were shocked that he ended up into the Mercedes, which was essentially a death trap. Tell us about that statement.
We had used that Mercedes-Benz, I think, on the 20th Mashujaa Day. But as we were coming back in that vehicle, he complained that it had issues with the brakes. And therefore, that is why that vehicle was parked outside his house and was not in use until he himself woke up that morning and directed that that was the vehicle they needed to use.
At the inquest, some fundamental questions would be raised as the family sought answers from persons of interest and investigating authorities. Among them was a request for an expert from the manufacturer of the Mercedes-Benz E250 to look into, among other issues, the airbags.
It was only right for the family to ask to be given an opportunity to hear from persons whom they thought had information that would clarify their thoughts on the happenings that had happened. And information out in the public, there are declarations, they're in the public, and they touched exactly on that subject matter. He would have been the absolute right person to give an opinion because he represents the maker. He knows what the commodity is, he knows the intricacies, he'd look at the damage of that vehicle and tell us very conclusively without a shadow of a doubt as to what would cause this sort of malfunctioning or this sort of damage.
Gakuru's family, through lawyer Martha Waweru, also demanded that the Director of Public Prosecutions summons 5 persons of interest for cross-examination on the matter. They were then Mathira Member of Parliament Jeffrey Rigathi Gachagua, Governor Edward Mutahi Kahiga, Nyeri County Secretary Benjamin Gashishio, Chief of Staff Paul Wambugu, and DCI Chief Investigating Officer Martin Nyuguto.
Our understanding, mine including theirs, was that an inquest was a fact-finding mission. It was something to allow the family to come to terms with the ideas of what had happened, lay to rest any idea of foreplay that could have been involved because there was a lot happening then. And because some of these persons had said things in public that touched directly on the incidents, and I think it was only reasonable for them to feel that maybe they know something that will help us come to terms with the situation. It wasn't out of any malice or anything. If you've been through grief, and unfortunately I've been with someone very close, those are the things you want to hear. You want to lash onto something that helps you come to terms with what has happened. And so it was, and then also I think by the time we were coming to that request, there had been a number of witnesses who had mentioned things here and there that would raise questions for other people to answer.
When I sat down with the Nyuguto, and I'd want to him to look me straight in the eyes. That time, at the beginning of the investigations, the first few days when he was cooperative, he was very cooperative, because he told me actually he comes from the same place with Wahome. He has known him since he was a small boy. So I thought, we are dealing with somebody. Who actually feels the pain that the family is going through about this death. So we thought it is somebody who's going to help us. But all of a sudden he changed. He stopped picking our calls, and he told me those preliminary days when just after the accident, that according to him, when he looked at this matter, this man was actually assassinated. Those are his words. Nyuguto himself.
Gachagua and Kahiga moved to court seeking to block the summons. Their lawyer Wahome Gikonyo told the court that he was seeking protection against self-incrimination of his clients. Chief Magistrate Francis Andai then found their objection to summons without merit and ordered them to testify at the inquest. But the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions filed for a review of the ruling in High Court, arguing that the appearance of the five would add no probative value to the proceedings. Nyeri High Court Judge Florence Moshemi would then quash the summons in August 2022, allowing Governor Kahiga and then Deputy President-elect Gachagua to withdraw as witnesses. Gachagua and President William Ruto had just been declared winners of the 2022 presidential election.
The inquest was not about me. It was about the circumstances surrounding the accident. And I, Mutahi Kahiga, learned of the accident like you and me, you and everybody else. So I was going to offer no new information.
I think it was only fair for them to appear and shed light, because none of them turned up in court. Some of them were his very, very close friends and allies, including Governor Mutahi Kahiga. There was no harm for him to come to court and say what he knew. Instead of speculation, it was good for him to come to court, present himself in court, let him be cross-examined, and the truth comes out. So there was that behavior whereby people, they started thinking like they are being targeted, and all that the people of Nyeri wanted, the family, the people of Kenya, and any person of goodwill and his friends, was to know the truth. What happened to this man? A good man who had a vision for the people of Nyeri. You see, when you refuse to come and testify, is it that you have something to hide? You know, that's the position. And if you look at how things have unfolded later on, you find that Wahome had so many fake friends. If you look at those people he was very close to, a lot of them, I'm not saying all of them, a lot of them, and actually some of his greatest beneficiaries, the biggest beneficiaries of his death, most of them abandoned him, abandoned his family, abandoned his parents.
The development infuriated the family, which then withdrew from the inquest out of frustration with how the Nyeri High Court stayed Magistrate Andai's ruling, objecting to the summons.
The IO who has participated in this is not Mr. Nyuguto, who is the lead. It's another delegated, and at that point we were not even taking part in the proceedings. So I think that is only for Simon or Mr. Nyuguto who can answer that appropriately. When we talked of the current Nyeri governor, he had indicated that he had spoken to the late Governor Gakuru, and specifically on that vehicle that he was supposed to use, and they had an exchange purportedly to say the vehicle is not in good condition, it should not even carry someone of his stature, if anyone at all. So if there were issues with the vehicle known pre-accident, why is the assessor's report contradictory? 2, from the security protocol management of such a high-profile leader, why wasn't the state of his vehicle a concern to those who should ensure that he's being ferried by a properly maintained vehicle, So and given that he had provided that information publicly, the family was very willing to hear what did he do to ensure that the governor did not get ferried on that vehicle.
NTV Investigates wrote to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions seeking responses to several questions raised by the family. Among them, what informed the decision that the public utterances by Nyeri Governor Mutahi Kahiga did not raise probative value in adding to the fact that the subject motor vehicle Mercedes-Benz registration number GVN 019A was defective. 2. Why didn't the ODPP explore the discovery of Joseph Mwangi Elias Baba Maina as a police imposter and query the Chief of Staff of Nyeri County Government on his hiring? 3. How was the determination reached that then Mathira Member of Parliament Rigathi Gachagua did not need to shed light on detailed allegations of his hand in county operations and procurement deals? Why did the ODPP fail to allow the family of the late governor to take up the complainant tag to seek and counter-check responses on key suspicions? And lastly, why didn't the ODPP follow through on claims for protection against self-incrimination by notable persons of interest? Whose interest was it serving? To which the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions responded as follows. The Chief Magistrate ruling stated that although the issue of maintenance of the late governor's vehicle was raised, no evidence was tendered to indicate that the vehicle had any defects that would have led to the accident. On the issue of police imposter, no investigations were done on that aspect and no evidence tendered to indicate that the security of the deceased was compromised as a result, or that it was a factor in the occurrence of the accident. The ODPP also says it did not make a determination that then Mathira Member of Parliament Rigathi Gachagua did not need to testify in court. In addition, the witnesses raised many issues with respect to area politics and mentioned who could have had an interest in the demise of the deceased, but admitted had no evidence against any of them. The theories were suspicious. On the family's concerns, ODPP says although there have been different theories in an attempt to establish a connection to other players in the occurrence of the accident, there is no concrete evidence tendered before the court which can prove the accident was intentional or planned. Lastly, and that where a person invokes the right against self-incrimination pursuant to provisions of Article 50 of the Constitution, ODPP cannot compel such person to give self-incriminating testimony. And in June 2024, Nyeri Chief Magistrate Alfred Kibiru ruled that Simon Kinyanjui was reckless in his driving, which resulted in the accident. The Director of Public Prosecutions directed the DCI to arrest and charge driver Samuel Kinyanjui with the offense of causing death by dangerous driving, contrary to Section 46 of the Traffic Act, and careless driving contrary to Section 49 of the Act. Corporal Kaib still harbors the scars of that fateful day. This is the kind of memory one carries for a lifetime, he says.
Yani kama hata sauti ilipotea na sioni kitu mzuri, so nilikuwa hali mahututi. So walisema hakuna haja ya kuongojea, hii mguu kwanza ikatwe. Kaingizwa theater. Kutoka hapo sasa sikuwa najua sasa watu. Kwanza nisemekana wakati nimeamuka nimeitisha mguu yangu iko wapi? Madaktari. Sasa mguu saa hiyo iko wapi? From there sasa nikakubali tu. Nikakubali, nimesema ile ilitendeka. Wacha tu nikubali. Mimi ni disabled.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hakuna counseling yote uliwahi undergo mpaka leo?
Hakuna counseling. Hakuna counseling.
Hakuna counseling umefanywa?
Hakuna.
Tangu utoke kwa accident ulitoka tu hospitali na ukarudi kazini. Hakuna mahali umepelekwa kufanywa nini?
Hapana. Nililala hapo for 6 months. Mwezi wa 3 ndio nimetolewa. Bill ilikuwa 13 million. National government wamesimamia. From there nilikuwa nimekaa kwangu Nyeri, lakini nilikuwa naletwa clinic Nairobi kwa ile daktari yangu ile amenifanyia operation ya mfupa. Nikihitaji hospitali wanatuma ambulance na nileta. Baadaye wakani hand over kwa ofisi yetu. Wakaambiwa sasa hii mtu askari akitaka kwenda clinic mnatoa gari mnapeleka. Baadaye nika hand over kwa ofisi. Kaambiwa sasa askari huyu bado wako na matibabu yake yanaendelea. So from there nilikuwa nimeendelea tu matibabu mpaka 2021 nikarudi tena operation Coptic Hospital. Walisema hiyo mfupa hiyo chuma imepata infection. So nikatolewa chuma. Up to date bado naendelea na clinic yangu ambayo ni Nairobi West Hospital. Naona daktari ananipatia for 14 days, narudi kwake sababu bado kutoka magoti paka pacha ndio mahali niko na shida. Sababu daktari alisema hapa imesagika na alitoa mfupa zote.
Hiyo mabati ya railguard ilikukatia mguu wapi exactly?
Ilikata hapa. Hii ilikuwa imeshikiwa na ngusi hivi. So that's why wamekatia hapo. Kutoka hapo tena ilikuja ikapita hapa kwa pacha. Ikasaga. Because daktari wakati walifanya operation wameona mtu tukikata paka paja atakuwa akitumia maisha yake hizi. Lakini tukikata chini ya magoti anaweza faa ile prosthesis atembee naye. Nilikuwa natumia hiyo prosthesis but imeharibika na ingine kununua ni kama 250 400 na sina hiyo pesa. Sasa nalipa loan ya hiyo gari ambaye imefanya sasa naweza tembea ile mahali popote mimi nataka. Nikimaliza hiyo loan ya hiyo gari ndio nitashughulika hiyo prosthesis.
Kaib now uses his left leg to drive. He expected the Nyeri County government to come to his aid, but that never happened.
Watu wa Nyeri County government hawajanikujia. Kakaa kwa nyumba. Alafu kijana yangu akafanya class 8. Akapata starehe. Sasa mimi mwenyewe nikatembea. Nakuja kuona governor. Nataka nisaidie. Akaniuliza shida nini, nikamuuliza sasa kijana amepata starehe na sina fees. Governor ile swali ameniuliza kama nimefutwa na serikali. Nikasema sijafutwa, niko kazi bado. Ananiambia basi kama hiyo kijana huwezi hiyo kulipa hiyo karo yake, si utoe hiyo shule ulete ile shule unawezana naye. Nikamwambia siwezi. So nimeona hataki kunisaidia. Nikatoka kwake. Nikakuja kwa starehe. Wakaniona vile niko. Unajua kuna watoto yatima. Hata kama unaweza lipa hata 2 million. Lakini ile fees ina sustain kijana yako hapa ni 140. Kamwambia mimi sina. Nimeingia accident, hali yangu ndio hii. Mimi mwenyewe naenda clinic, so munisaidie. Kaniambia sawa, sisi tutakulipia fees nusu. Tafuta hiyo nusu nyingine. Nikang'ang'ana, amemaliza starehe. Sasa hii yako university. Niko na moja sasa yako class 4 form 4. Na watatu niko na primary. Nasukuma tu maisha. Maisha imekuwa ngumu. Hali siku hizi mnaona vile iko. Kutegemea mshahara si kitu. Ni bibi tu ndio ananisaidia. Mimi sasa unajua sina namna nyingine, ni kukaa tu kwa nyumba.
Determined in seeking help from his last workstation, he made another attempt.
Wakati sasa governor amesema hivyo, nikajaza hizo bursary za governor. Si kuna bursary anatoaga, nimejaza hizo several time. Nikaona imefail. Hata nikajaza na nikapelekea kwa ofisi yake tena. Sikufaulu. Nikatembea kwa maofisi zake zile ministries zingine. Angalau waone kama yani wanaweza shauri tu governor nisaidiwe. Hata wao imefail.
The issue of bursary was not brought to my attention, and neither even the issue of compensation was never brought to our attention, because there was no ground, no legal liability on the county. How? Bodyguards and askaris are hired by the Kenya Police Service. That is the employer. They are deployed to us. Deployment doesn't take away responsibility from the national government and from Kenya Police Service. Their insurance, medical insurance and all kind of insurance lies with the national government. For us, we only pay them two things. One, an extraneous allowance, and number two, we pay them what we call per diem when they are out at night, or when they have to go. For example, if the governor is going to Mombasa and he takes his bodyguard, he is paid a per diem as per his grade. You understand? So that doesn't make you an employee of the county. County governments are not run on what you can call, you know, that we run them on generosity, or there are laws that must be followed.
There's nobody in Gakuru's family that Mutai has helped get a job. He has employed hundreds of people. Drivers, whatever, watchmen, cracks, whatever. He cannot even employ one person. One person to be helping the family. At the time he was giving some little money to the family, 20,000, I think 30,000, that had been contributed by the Council of Governors, and he was the custodian of the money. And he was giving the family, I think, 30,000 per month. After the money went off, he never contributed, he never gave anything more than that. So I think it's something that those people who took office after him, they could not have been human for you to know if it is you who died and you are the governor. What the family is going through, is it what you'd want them to go through?
It turned out that personal assistant Albert Mushiri, who lost 3 fingers in the crash, was compensated by the county through Monarch Insurance Company. Koplo Kaib says he never received a cent, despite losing a leg in the line of duty.
County wamelipwa. Sababu gari ilikuwa na insurance, comprehensive insurance. They have been paid. The document have been paid, the vehicle has been paid. Na up to date mimi, hakuna shilingi moja hata county wameniambia pole. Sababu ya mguu yako ilikatikia hapo, wewe ni ndugu yangu, wewe ni ndugu yetu. Na wewe ni binadamu, shika hii. Hawajaniambia. Nikienda tu wananiambia their hands are tied.
For you to get compensation, you must be, number one, an employee of the county, and the county must have taken insurance for you. So in this case, we had Gakuru, who was a PA. He was paid by the county and the insurance because he was an employee. But our bodyguards, they only come with the deployment letters.
NTV Investigates sought Monarch Insurance comment on the matter, to which the company responded. Please be informed that we are bound by applicable data protection and privacy laws. including the Data Protection Act, which gives effect to Article 31C and D that contains the right to privacy, hence our inability to disclose such details. We responded by declaring that we were seeking details pursuant to Article 35 on access to information, but Monarch remained silent.
He has to lodge a claim.
Yes.
Yes. And since he was deployed in the county, there is a letter to that effect. He uses that letter.
In 2019, Ahmed Kaib filed a petition in court against the county government, but was dismissed for want of prosecution. The case was closed after a High Court advocate he worked with went cold and silent. Kaib has now acquired the services of another advocate in his unyielding quest for justice. Duncan Haemba for NTV.